Thank you very much. Excellent. So I want to begin by taking you back to just over 12 years ago and introduce you to myself when I had slightly more hair and slightly less beard. Now, I was raised in a very Christian background. I was raised with all of those Christian values, such as love and compassion and care. And I'm quite proud of that. I'm quite happy to say that I still live a lot of my life by these values. There was one issue, though, that I experienced when I was growing up. I knew from the age of around 12 that I was attracted to guys. Now, unfortunately for me, this put me in a bit of a dilemma. I knew that my religion would not allow this. So I either had to accept my sexuality and potentially risk losing my family, my friends, and my religion, or I could suppress my sexuality, and by doing so, I would make myself feel depressed and so on. At the tender age of 12, I decided to suppress my sexuality because I felt that was the best thing to do at that time. Unfortunately, though, this caused an awful lot of psychological health issues, and my psychological well-being just went down and down and down. This really came to a head on the 21st of February 2011, when my cat, little Ross, passed away. It was such an upsetting moment for me, and it really negatively affected me. After that point, I remember 3 days later going into the bathroom, and I had tears rolling down my eyes. And I looked in the mirror, and I said to myself, Tim, there is still only one thing in your life that you haven't actually tried. There's one thing that you still haven't done. And that thing, surely, whatever the outcome of that is, it can't be any worse than what you're feeling right now. So on that day, the 24th of February 2011, I decided to accept my sexuality and start living authentically. Not just in terms of my sexuality. I realized suddenly that life became so much more interesting and so much more exhilarating and exciting. I suddenly realized that I love to travel. I love to experience different cultures and different kinds of food and different types of music. I love trying all sorts of different things, exciting activities. I suddenly realized that I wanted to go back to college and university, study to become a therapist and study to become a psychologist. And I'm currently about to submit my PhD thesis. It's all really exciting. I realized that I love education. I love learning. I'm currently learning Icelandic, which is such a great language. It's so fun to speak and to go there and talk to people and communicate with them in their own language. Brilliant. I also came to realize the importance of my relationships in my family and my friends. I love my friends. I love my family. My mum and dad are wonderful people. I love my brother and sister. They're great. And I've got nieces and nephews. I'm about to have my brother's second boy. And they're great kids. They really, really love being alive, and they love helping me to understand what it means to enjoy life and to accept humor. Brilliant. And I have my partner as well, who also I love and who loves me back. So what I'm trying to say here, I'm trying to suggest that understanding what you really value in life, what your personal values are, is what makes us authentic. Not only does it make us authentic, but it also makes us happier. That's what my thesis is about. When we talk about personal values, we need to think about them in context. Now, society gives us a lot of information, doesn't it? Society tells us the kind of people that we should be, the kind of things that we should be doing in our lives. To give you an example, we are told that we must not murder, we must not steal, we must drive less than 30 miles an hour in a built-up area. And in general, we're fine with these things, aren't we? At least, hopefully we are. Now, what happens, though, when our personal values do conflict with social norms? Because it does happen. Sometimes someone will say something to us, and we think, I don't want to do that. That goes against my own personal values. The issue of sexuality that I spoke about before would be an example of this. My society, my environment, my religion told me that this is not acceptable. And unfortunately, this conflicted with my personal values. Again, it causes a dilemma. And the question is, what do you do in that dilemma? Another recent one is the vaccines. A lot of people in this country didn't want to take them, but we were being encouraged to take them, weren't we? When I'm talking about these kind of things, I think I need to be very clear as well, that we're not talking about encouraging people to do things that are illegal. So, for example, someone could come up to me and say, do you know what, Tim, I absolutely love taking people's lives. I love stealing. It really speaks to my authentic self. That's not what I'm talking about here. Not in talking about encouraging people to do things that are illegal, unethical, or immoral. Of course we're not. What we're talking about is helping people to understand how to be authentic in terms of social and societal norms. Let me give you an example. Around 9 months ago, I went to a classical concert. I love classical music. I think it's brilliant. And I was sitting there in Manchester, in the auditorium, surrounded by 1,200 people. And they just played The Planets by Gustav Holst. Incredible music. I highly recommend everyone listen to it. It's brilliant. They just finished playing Jupiter, which is triumphant, magnanimous. It's brilliant music, wonderful. At the end of it, I was the only person in the entire room that burst out in applause. Now, I imagine a lot of people in the room were looking at me thinking, what's this guy doing? He's insane. You don't do that during a suite at a classical concert. I don't care. I really love this music. I really value it. It really speaks to me. It's the kind of person I am. I adore this kind of thing. And I don't care what you think. I'm being authentic. I think it's a very important thing. It's so important to me that around 6 years ago, I decided I wanted to come back to university and use my experiences and my authentic experiences to help other people to try and be and to live authentically. So I decided to do some basic work on this. I decided to lay the foundations. Let's do a little bit of research to see what authenticity relates to in life. So one of the first things we did is we ran 3 studies, around 2,700 participants, and we asked people what did they think effectively authenticity would relate to. And we found there was a very large overlap with valued living, which I'll come to in a moment, also depression, satisfaction with life, and also a reasonable overlap with self-esteem. Now, this is really interesting and also very helpful for my PhD. In terms of valued living forms one of the key components of acceptance and commitment training. Now, the reason why this is helpful is because I, as a therapist, or as a PhD student at least, could give a participant or a client a dose of valued action, acceptance, and commitment training. Now, if this overlaps with authenticity, which my research suggests it does, once I increase their valued action, this should theoretically also increase their authenticity. Likewise, if I can increase their authenticity and this overlaps with depression, I can decrease their depression. I can also increase their satisfaction with life and self-esteem. So that is my hypothesis. That's my hypothesis today, and that's the hypothesis of my PhD. If I can help someone live a more values-based life, I can increase their authenticity and I can increase their psychological well-being. So, how did I do it? Now, I'm currently running this. This is the very last study of my PhD. I'm just about to start data collection, so I must say, very tentatively, I can't actually prove any of this is empirically correct yet. But I'm hypothesizing that it is. So I've developed a prototype. It's a self-help program, and it's called UBU. And the point is developing your authentic self. And it's based on acceptance and commitment training. A lot of the exercises and tasks in here come from Russ Harris and Joanna Dahl, who've done some excellent work on helping people, encourage them to live more values-based lives. So let me show you how it works. People log onto the app, and they are shown the very first task. Now, in the first task, they are given 57 individual values that go all the way down, right down to the bottom of the app, and then they're asked to rate them. Not important, important, and very important. So once this is done, they've rated all of the ones that are very important. These then go into the final page, which then help them, hopefully, think about what their most important values are. The point behind this is that we've helped clarify what their personal values are. The developer of acceptance commitment therapy and training said several years ago that people tend to just meander through their lives. They don't really give a lot of thought to the kind of people they are, which I find quite a bizarre concept. So the point behind the first exercise is to help them think about these questions. What kind of person are you? What are your values? What do you want your life to be about? And then hopefully at the end of this exercise, the individual, the participant, now knows what their most important values are in their life. And the final part, we ask them to order them. So these are mine: self-development, humor, open-mindedness, and adventure. I would use those to define who I am as a person. They're my values. So we've clarified the person's individual values. Now what we want to do is ask the individual how closely they live by these values. And we do this in the form of a metaphor. So I want you to imagine, right in front of you, there's a dartboard. And each ring of the dartboard signifies how closely you're living by your personal values. The bullseye itself would signify that you are living perfectly by your individual values. And the outer ring would signify that you're not living by your value at all. If I select self-development, which is probably my most important value, and I was to throw a dart right now, where would it land? For me, it'd probably land somewhere on 4, maybe edging onto 5. I'm doing quite well with this one, but I think I still need to do a bit of work on it. So the point behind this very quick exercise is to help individuals work out not just what their values are, but how closely in their life they're living by them. And then the third exercise, the final exercise, is then to help them try and explore ways to engage in these values. So my chosen value is self-development. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is to think about some values-based actions that you can engage in over the next week. So the point behind these things here, these actions, is that they must be simple, easy to do, manageable, and they don't necessarily have to cost you any money either. They could be simple things that could take 5 or 10 minutes every day that you could work on. In terms of self-development then, I'm a PhD student, so maybe I could set myself a task of writing 200 words on my PhD by the end of the week. Maybe I could read the next chapter of my Icelandic book. And the third one for me, at home, I have still got skirting boards under my bed, which I still need to fit in the kitchen, and I can't be arsed doing it. So I could set myself a goal of maybe looking at a YouTube video on how to do this. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? And then after that, make a plan. So when could you do these things? How could you do them? What kind of things do you need to arrange to be able to take part in these actions? Well, I could set aside some time on Saturday because I know I'm not working. I could make sure the door's locked and all these kind of things, make sure no one's interrupting me. A good way for me to motivate myself is to make sure I've got enough tea and coffee in the house, and also those gorgeous chocolate-covered OT biscuits, because that kind of stuff really helps me. And then finally, what obstacles could you face? Well, one of the biggest obstacles I find is my mobile phone. I'm working, writing, next thing, oh, look at that, someone sent me a funny video or a joke or a meme. It's just so distracting. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my phone away. That will help me to engage in this action. And then the final one, of course, is I get very demotivated when doing handyman work. So I could basically just ask my dad, have you got any tips on how to do it? Or better yet, he could just do the bloody things for me. No, that would be against the spirit of self-development. I must do it myself. Once that's all done, this all gets put into a values-based action planner, which the individual or the participant can take away with them and refer to and help them, hopefully, over the course of the next week, to live more authentically. Now, as I say, this is, at the moment, all theoretical. I'm currently running my last study on this. I'm very excited about it because, as I've hypothesized, if I can increase valued action, and then this also leads to an increase in authenticity, this could also lead to an increase in psychological well-being. If this works, and I can collect data that shows that it does work and that the self-help program has efficacy, I can hopefully get this published. And if it gets published, other researchers can use it, other academics can use it. But most importantly to me, other people, everyday people, can use this. Not only is it easy to use, not only is it cheap or free, and as long as I'm in charge of it, it'll always be free. But also, the goal really here is that it works. And if it does work, it will hopefully help people live more authentically. So now, to conclude, I want to ask you, what are your values? What kind of person are you? What kind of person would you like to be? Maybe you're the kind of person who already knows the answers to these questions. You already know the kind of person you are. You already know the kind of life you want to live. And that's great. Maybe there's a bit of room for improvement. There usually always is. Maybe you're one of those kind of people that Steve Hayes spoke about in acceptance commitment training, that just meander through life and don't really give it a lot of thought as to the kind of person they are. At the end of today, I'm going to challenge you, if you're able and willing, to go away and think about these questions. Think about your personal values. Think about how closely in life you live by them. Think about some values-based actions that you could engage in. If you did, I'm so confident it will make you more authentic and make you happier. To quote William Shakespeare, this above all, to thine own self be true. Thank you.